For almost 20 years, he protested his innocence while living a life of hell in one of America's notorious maximum security penitentiaries.
I was tried for the death penalty. I just narrowly escaped the electric chair. So it's not the 20 years in prison. I just eased by the electric chair. I was all that I had. No, everybody else thought that I was a racist murderer. Who wants to be involved with a racist murderer? So I was stuck there. The moment that they accused me of this crime, I said, no, I did not commit this crime. I had nothing to do with it, and you know that I had nothing to do with it.
For almost 20 years, Rubin "Hurricane" Carter spent a lonely, grim existence behind bars, never giving up his dreams of being exonerated from a crime he said he did not commit.
It infects every molecule of your being. It affects your talk, it affects your walk, it affects your psychology, it affects your physiology, it affects everything about you, whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not. And unless you're aware of it, it's gonna send you right back to prison, because that's what prison does. It conditions you where you can only exist there, and you can't exist anywhere else.
Having grown up in one of the toughest of America's black communities in New Jersey, Rubin Carter became a boxer. After a distinguished amateur career, he stepped into the professional ring, knocked out 21 opponents in 40 fights, and quickly became known as the Hurricane.
Rubin "Hurricane" Carter scores a shocking one-round knockout over reigning welterweight champion Emil Griffith.
That's the way that Carter can throw short punches, and there with a right hand. As Fernandez on the deck. They must take the mandatory 8 count. More than 2 minutes left in the
1964, he fought for the world middleweight title and lost to Joey Giardello on a split decision. 2 years later, he just signed for a second world title fight against Dick Tiger, and his life changed for good. Carter and a friend, John Artis, were held by police on suspicion of shooting dead 3 white men in a New Jersey bar. The murders were believed to have been racially motivated, but overwhelming evidence suggested that Carter and Artis were innocent. And yet 4 months later, they were arrested and charged with the 3 murders. An all-white jury convicted them, and the 2 men were each given triple life sentences. The verdict opened up accusations of racism, and many leading public figures, including Muhammad Ali, led protests against the convictions. Bob Dylan further publicized Carter's cause in a record labeled Hurricane. But appeals and retrials brought no change. Rubin Carter seemed destined to remain a prisoner. Much of his time was spent here at Rahway Maximum Security Jail in New Jersey, where he steadfastly refused to conform or was protesting his innocence.
I wouldn't operate with the prison. I wouldn't cooperate with the prison. I wouldn't cooperate with my keepers to keep me there. I would not eat their food. I would not wear their clothing. I would not work their jobs. I would not talk to any of them. And therefore, I was a menace to them. I was a danger to them, because other people may begin to emulate me, so they had to get me out of their sight. They had to lock me away in solitary confinement. And that's where I remained for the vast majority of my 20 years in prison.
It's hard enough doing 20 years in prison, you know, being away from your family and people that, you know, traveling and doing things you want to do. But when you lock your own self up, you know, a little more than the system locks you up the way he did, it's probably a lot more difficult, because you have nobody to talk to but yourself in the mirror, I guess. I tell you the truth, it's probably more difficult doing time the way he did it.
Carter talked to virtually no one in jail and made no friends. Yet his stand brought admiration from many inmates.
Well, Rubin was a person that helped me out when I got here, because I was young. You know, I didn't have no sense of direction. And I looked up to him because I seen what he went through the years that he was in prison. And I heard about him, by going to rallies for him when I was on the street. So he was like my hero.
The door to freedom was eventually opened only after he received a letter from a 16-year-old black youth. Lesra Martin was a poor, illiterate boy from a Brooklyn ghetto. He'd met a group of well-off Canadians who taught him to read and write, and the first book he bought was about Carter. The story incensed him. It was the start of a 5-year fight by Lesra, his Canadian mentors, and Carter's lawyers, which finally led to his release in 1985.
Thank you, man, we did it.
A New Jersey judge finally threw out the case, saying the original verdict had been racially motivated. John Artis and Rubin Carter were officially exonerated in 1988, more than 20 years after being convicted.
It is over.
That day was a miraculous day, not only for me, but for a lot of other people too. And that's what made it so special to me, that it was not mine personally, but it was an indication that everybody shared. It was a surprise that everybody shared. It was beautiful.
Amid the peaceful surroundings of this mock Tudor house just outside Toronto, Carter now lives a vastly contrasting existence with his new Canadian friends, Sam Chaitin and Terry Swinton. It was Chaitin and Swinton who were credited with the largest part in helping his fight for freedom. Carter has written 2 books on his story and is currently working on the screenplay for a movie after being signed up by a Hollywood producer. Nothing can ever replace those 20 lost years or the chance to become a world champion. But next month in Las Vegas at the World Boxing Council's annual convention, he'll be awarded an honorary world championship belt. For Rubin "Hurricane" Carter, it will be the proudest moment of his life.
I've been to the mountaintop. You know, I've been to the mountaintop, and I've seen over the mountaintop. And all I can say about that would make any sense to anybody is that it exists. Whatever this it is, it exists.